I'm driving along. My chick's telling me that, I don't measure up to the standards of her friends, boyfriends, or some shit like
Oh
that. And she
my
calls me
god.
cheap. I'm
Okay.
on a four-lane highway. As soon as she calls me cheap, I Yui that. Drive her home. I don't say a word. Unlock the door. Open it. I go, get out.
I love it. The stimulus checks are here, so I'm relaunching Womanies Volume 4, which has over 250 hours of bonus content. I'm also relaunching Womanies Audio, which is less than half the price of the video version. Link in description. What's up, guys? It's your man, Donovan Sharpe, and welcome to this TSR special, this late morning, early afternoon special, of course. It would help to unmute myself. We are brought to you by Happy Hippo Herbals, home of the highest quality kratom on the planet, for a caffeine-free energy boost. With laser focus and mood enhancement, look no further than happyhippoherbals.com. Save 25% when you pay with Bitcoin. 914-205-5356 is the call-in number. Let's go ahead and get to it. My special guest today, as you guys can see on the screen, is none other than Richard Cooper of Entrepreneurs in Cars. And what we're going to discuss today is we're going to discuss the importance of entrepreneurship as it applies to masculinity and, of course, becoming debt-free. Living a life free of debt, not having to owe people. Richard, how you doing, man?
Good, man. Dude, very good.
Good. It's good. And I do appreciate you making the time for us today, man. I know we're all busy guys. Of course, you've got a lot to do. Now, a lot of people probably, I'd never heard of you until I saw you on the Red Man group. And I said, wait a minute, this dude's got like 65, 70, I don't know, what are you at, 80,000 subscribers on YouTube now?
106,000.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Yeah, so you've gained 30,000 subscribers since the first time I heard about you. So tell me a little bit about what you do. What is the basic premise of the Entrepreneurs in Cars franchise?
The franchise. Wow. It's called
Here
a
we go.
franchise now.
Here we go.
All right. So the Entrepreneurs in Cars thing was the thing I started 4 years ago when I was really stuck in life. I hated my business. I hated what was going on in it. The government just changed some legislation that really me over, and I had to really pivot and make some huge changes that were difficult. I just got divorced, broke up with a single mom that crushed my heart, and I was just like, I got to do something different. So I started to basically mash up passions, because all I knew is I wasn't doing shit that I liked, so I wanted to do more of that. So what I did was I basically figured, let's interview friends that were entrepreneurs that had success rides that overcame obstacles in their life. So I called it Entrepreneurs in Cars, except for after about. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. I was saying, cool. How about that? Yeah.
All right, cool. So, but I ran out of friends with cool cars after about 5 episodes. So I started kind of like filling in shit with how I hire people with parties, office culture, how to use lawyers in your business, stuff like that. And one day some guy came along, and some people watched the videos. They were interesting for some, but it never really got traction. And then one day some guy came along in the comments and he goes, "You should do a video on the types of women to avoid dating." And I was like, all right, well, I didn't know this at the time, but I was still blue pilled and plugged in. But I'm like, okay. Sure. So I just talked about these 3 crazy chicks that I dated. And that got picked up in the algorithms and just kind of like blown up and passed around. And then I guess since then I got red pilled by the Rational Mail, went down a few MGTOW rabbit holes and kind of consumed some of that content and just, created my own sort of brand and way of dealing with it. And I've built a large Patreon community. I put out regular content. Close to 550 videos I've published, Ooh. Maybe 1,000 recorded that I haven't put out. But yeah, it's going pretty good. It's been fun.
Good, very good. Yeah, it was. It's interesting. The first question that I always ask a guest the first time I have them on is, how did you find the red pill? And of course, you mentioned the buzzword single mom. Of course, now we know that single moms are obviously a bad bet. But what you decided to do is what most men don't, and you decided to parlay your failure into success. You knew that you were doing shit you didn't like. You like fast cars, you like pretty girls, and you've sort of merged them together into your own business and really your own brand. Talk to me about the correlation that owning your own business, being an entrepreneur, how that correlates with true masculinity, not this toxic masculinity that feminists would all lead us to believe, but how does a man who owns his own brand, how does that correlate with masculinity?
Well, as you guys already know, if you're watching Donovan's content, men have the burden of performance. You've got to be competent. You've got to be able to deliver. You've got to be able to perform. You got to take ownership for your life and that sort of. And I don't think there's any truer calling or cause than putting a dent in the universe with some kind of business or community that you're building. So that's how I see it, and that's kind of how I run my world going forward. At least since the last couple of years.
Okay. All right. Good. One now, a lot of listen. I haven't watched many of your videos, but I guess if we can get a little bit, actually had a question here from a viewer. He wants to know how many cars. He wants to know how many cars you actually have, and which one is your favorite one.
Well, I only keep two at a time, and that's a function of the size of my garage.
Okay,
If I had a bigger garage, I'd definitely own more cars. And I can't get a lift in the bloody thing, so I'm stuck with that. But I've got a 2011 R8 6-speed manual, so it's got the gated manual with a V10 that's got about 600 horsepower. It's got a tune and a whole bunch of other goodies on it. And I just sold a 700 horsepower 2012 M5, which was retarded fast. Like I basically sold it because I would put my foot down in first and second gear and it would light up the back tires. And I replaced that with an S5, which is basically it's an Audi. It's a daily driver Quattro, which will be good in the snow and it won't give me a hard time in parking lots when I go skiing with my daughter. But speed for me has always been a big thing. I love shit that goes fast. And as a guy, firstborn, alpha, I need to be in control of stuff. That's why when people go, well, how about skydiving? Well, I don't really like falling. I like flying planes. That's cool. But
yeah, but no. That's certainly not for me. And for the people who are who are not grease monkeys and R8, he's talking about the Audi R8. And if you still don't know which one I'm talking about, it's the Iron Man car. I think the first time we had all seen the R8 was in the movie Iron Man, and of course basically Iron Man, Tony Stark. It's one giant Audi commercial. It's definitely a badass car. Here's a question from a viewer. He says, and this is kind of a longer question, but bear with me here. He says, I'd love to know Richard's thought process and mindset for not just coming up with an idea for a viable business opportunity, but going through the planning and execution phases. Does he plan a specific rate of return on his investment with a specific time period when investing or creating a business, or is that the wrong mindset to start? Also, when it comes time to initially raise capital funds for his businesses, does he use debt, or that's actually a good question, or does he self-fund or get funded through other capital investors, business partners? If using capital, this is a 9-part question. If you're using capital from other partners, right? Yeah. Does he have to present them with a targeted rate of return? Wow. So I guess take me from, so you have an idea. How do you start it? What's your financial strategy?
Okay, well, this is going to give your patrons a load of value for the money that they're spending.
Let's do it, man. Let's do it.
First things first is a lot, like most businesses fail. So 9 out of 10 businesses will fail within the first couple of years. Most people make really bad choices. I've started a business that collapsed on themselves and didn't work out. And here's what I've learned. Excuse me. First of all, I hate product-based businesses. Okay. If you have to buy stuff, store it, ship it, return it, deal with customers that make excuses as to why it didn't show up, or it was broken in the mail, or it didn't, perform as expected, blah, 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 fill in the blanks. It's a nightmare. So my preference is always to deal with either information or with some kind of service. Okay. Because it's very easy to get to your customer, and you don't have to deal with returns and shipping logistics and fulfillment and that
inventory.
Sort of stuff.
Yeah, inventory is a pain in the ass, man.
It's a huge pain in the ass. Like a lot of guys do really well with Shopify and Amazon and Fulfilled by Amazon and that sort of stuff, but I don't want to be shipping. It's too much of a hassle. So that is definitely a no-go zone for me. The other thing that I look for in a business when I create it is it has to generate recurring revenue. So what that means is I don't want to eat what I kill. Okay. If you're out hunting deer, you're going to eat that deer. It's going to last for 4 days. Then you're going to have to go out again, stalk and hunt more deer, sort of thing. I want to get a customer for life. So I want them to basically to subscribe to some kind of renewal service where they're always going to be a customer of mine or for a very long period of time. Okay. And that way I know at the start of each month what I've got coming in and what I have to manage in context with that. So great examples of that are magazine subscriptions, cell phone contracts, even what we're doing right now with Patreon, building our own communities of great men. We put out regular content, the community grows. We're able to, polish and make better content as that community grows, and we're earning more money as time passes. So probably the most intelligent way to kind of filter out the a lot of people will get into products and they want to ship it, and they'll do really well with nutraceuticals and supplements and things, things like that. I just don't want to deal with the headache that's involved with that. Okay. The other no-go zone. So I'm talking mostly about deal breakers right now because I find that's the easiest to get to where you want to go is eliminate the that's going to take you off track. So another deal breaker for me is any kind of business that requires a lot of people. Human resources are an incredible waste of time, money, and expense. The problem with humans is they're not very efficient. They file labor board complaints over tiny bullshit. They're fighting each other. There's drama in the office. You know, you can go right down the list. You know, and it's not just that. I mean, here in Canada, if you pay somebody like $14 an hour, which I think is the minimum wage now, the total cost for that employee is anywhere from I think 17 to 18.50 an hour, because of healthcare benefits, taxes, employment insurance, blah blah blah. You know, like you name it.
Okay.
So they're not very effective. So I always try to structure any kind of business that I'm doing with as few people as possible.
Good.
So those would be the big deal breakers for me. Now there's like 9 parts in that thing. What was the next thing in the question list?
So the next thing in the question was, let me get back to it. Oh, he was talking about funding. So do you self-fund? Do you use debt?
Self-fund.
Do you bring in
self-fund? Right. Okay. Yeah, self-fund. I mean, answer. there's so many guys that will go and get angel investing or raise capital or borrow against the house or credit cards or whatever they're doing. I always like to bootstrap. I mean, I bootstrap the YouTube channel. I've got money to go and buy an audience or market it, sort of thing. But proof of concept is if you say something that's worthwhile, that's worth sharing, people will share it.
Right.
So if you're saying dumb, you're paying to get your dumb in front of other people, it's a waste of your time. All you're doing is you're becoming popular for no reason whatsoever. So it's incredibly important, in my opinion, to bootstrap any kind of business. Now, there's guys out there that'll argue that say, well, you can't build this kind of business without getting angel investing capital or this, that, and the other thing. Fine. But most people that do that, they end up either losing control of their business.
Right.
Exactly. Or when it sells, they get almost nothing for it when it sells. There's plenty of articles out there on entrepreneurs' websites and publications that clearly demonstrate people that borrow money to build and grow their business, often when they exit the business, are left with all.
Right. Right. And listen, you bring up an excellent point. You actually married two those questions together. To circle it back, there was one guy who wanted to know, how many employees do you have? How do you feel about employees? Obviously you answered that question. Yeah. The more people you have involved, the more diluted the product becomes. But going back to what you were talking about with angel investors and you know, people investing in this and that and the other, it is inevitable that at some point that business it's no longer your own, because now when you have people investing money in you, now all of a sudden they want to say in the concept, the day-to-day operations, and before you know it, you don't recognize the company that you started. And don't get me wrong, you certainly have to change and evolve and you have to make tough decisions, but those decisions need to be yours and yours alone. So if you're borrowing money, like you said, against your house or getting money from investors, you're sacrificing a little bit of creative control. And I think that's huge.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, let's see here. Okay, so that was an easy answer. Basically, and when you say bootstrap, you're talking about self-funding, just so everyone who knows and realizes this.
I mean, there's a lot of guys that will even try to self-fund or even fund the business, but they never run a profit. I mean, right. I think it's important to note that the entire purpose of a business is to create value to somebody
and to make money.
Yes,
right.
There's too many people that run these things that they call a business, and it's a hobby.
Yeah, it's a nonprofit. A hobby. I love it.
A living, you know, and you can't earn a living off it, or people aren't willing to give you money for what you're doing, and they continue to do it for free. It just doesn't make any sense.
Listen, if it's going to be a hobby, then make it a hobby. But I mean, listen, unless you're worth 8 figures, yeah, you can do a hobby and not make money. But you know, I think I speak for most people here, and I think I speak for you too. If I do something, I want to get paid for it. And I mean, listen, call me greedy, call me selfish. This is just the way of man. This is.
Well, I don't work for free, you know.
No, right.
And you probably get this too. Like off my public channel, and I know you're not on YouTube right now, but off my public channel, I get daily emails from people. Some long ass question: how do I solve this problem? What do you think?
Yes.
To which there's an autoresponder, so I don't need to deal with it. It's like, if you want my attention, I'm in this community. It's called Patreon, and you get access to me and these other people that are great men that will help you with the shit you're stuck on.
Oh, that's great.
You know, dust off your wallet and pay.
Listen, I agree with that. And every once in a while, you have these guys who are out here glad heading. Listen, I'll never forget one of the very
sellout.
Yes,
you're a sellout is my favorite line. Right?
Unbelievable. I remember I think it was like the second or third Patreon video that I put out. This is back when I still had a YouTube channel, when I sort of saw the end coming, so I was already preparing myself. So I recorded this big long Donovan's Den. It was like a half an hour. And what I did is I cut the first part, maybe like 5 or 10 minutes, and then I recorded hey, to hear the rest of this episode, subscribe to Donovan's Den on Patreon for just $5 a month. And I put that on YouTube. Dude, I had all these dudes, oh, you just proved that you're a sellout. These people in the manosphere are using this to exploit. Nah, Listen, man, the knowledge we bring to the table, this isn't some hobby we decided to take up. This took a lifetime of experience, research, and knowledge. And that's what I'm like, dude, there is collateral damage to this stuff. We're not trying to exploit anybody. Listen, our time isn't free. My time is, listen, you and I were in our 40s, and the older I get, the more valuable the commodity of time becomes. So if I spend 5 minutes on the manosphere, okay, I'll do a free Patreon page, but dude, I'm in this 9-10 hours a day. I gotta get paid for it. I have to make a living. That's just how it is.
It's not just that, but even though you're charging, you should be able to deliver 5 to 10 times the value of what you're charging.
Of course.
And there's no doubt. I know that you do it. I know that I do it.
Sure.
Whatever I charge for access to my premium content, people are getting at least 10 times the value of what I'm charging them. And that's why they stick in the community for so long, and it keeps growing, right?
Well, yeah, and I think it's a good financial strategy too, and we'll get into that here in a second. It's funny, my girlfriend and girlfriends in the past, they always, well, not my current girlfriend, she understands now, but I've always been called a cheapskate. Oh, Donovan, you're so cheap. You have all this money. And by the way, I used to drive an Audi A5 when I lived in Vegas. I actually sold that before I came out here to Philly. But I lived in this, due to this ridiculous Vegas high rise. I'm paying $3,500 a month. I'm driving around an Audi A5. But like when I go grocery shopping, I bring coupons. I'm looking for, and they always say, well, Donovan, you're a cheapskate. No, not necessarily. I'll spend money if it's worth it. What I look for is the best value. And this is what you and I create. I mean, listen, our knowledge is probably worth maybe $50 a month, but just like you said, you want to create 5 to 10 times the value, and that's where people stick. That's a good business model to have.
You know what? Since we talk about red pill shit so often, let me just share a quick story. And,
let's do it.
You know, I was always alpha, but still somewhat plugged in when I was younger. So in my 20s, I'm driving. I've been called a cheapskate by women before.
Of course,
or
absolutely.
You're cheap or something like that.
Oh my God,
and that usually ends up being some kind of shaming tactic.
Yes.
I'm driving along. My chick's telling me that, I don't measure up to the standards of her friends' boyfriends or some shit like that. She calls me cheap. Okay. I'm on a 4-lane highway. As soon as she calls me cheap, I Yui that. Drive her home. I don't say a word. Unlock the door. Open it. I go, get out.
I love it.
You know what she does? She follows me to the grocery store 10 minutes later, because that's where I was going to get some from No Frills here in Canada. It's a cheap grocery store. She follows me. I'm walking along. I feel a tap on my shoulder. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have called you cheap.
Yeah, right.
This works.
Listen, of course it does, and I think I talked about this in a Return of Kings article that just dropped yesterday. It's almost a manipulation tactic, and if calling you cheap doesn't work, what they'll do is they'll say, "Oh, I love how you're not a cheapskate," as if to somehow imply that you are going to spend money. So I'm supposed to say, "Oh my God, she doesn't think I'm a cheapskate. I gotta prove it to her every day." Get the f out of here with that.
Since we're talking about money in this broadcast, right?
Yeah.
I think it should be stated, and I think most guys get this anyway, is it's a lot easier to not spend money than it is to make money.
Yes.
I've gone into stores before where I'll pick up a product from the shelf and I might walk towards the cash, and then I realize kind of towards my stroll to the cash register, I'm like, do I really need this piece of going to take up space in my house that I'm probably not going to use in 3 months? And I find myself putting things down. And you know how easy and freeing that is not to buy dumb shit that you probably don't need?
And your wallet loves it too, right? Yeah. You have a fatter bank account. So seamless transition. Michael Holt asks, and this is kind of a general question, but he says, would you gentlemen share with us your personal money management systems or resources that you both use? I think it's pretty simple. I'll let you go first.
For me, money and staying out of debt and creating wealth is simple. It's so simple that I don't understand why more people don't get it. It's a math equation. And it's, if you make, I don't know, let's use $5,000 a month. If you make $5,000 a month, spend less than $5,000 a month, save the rest of it. That's it.
Right.
It's
Mystery
not fucking
solved. It's not
complicated.
rocket science.
You don't need to download an app or keep a spreadsheet every single month on what you spend on this, that, and the other thing. Just be awake.
That's just be present, man. Listen, that is a very good strategy for those of you, and here's the thing, and this is what I've always asserted. As far as vices are concerned, as far as bad habits are concerned, it is a lot harder to quit a bad habit than it is to start a new one. And so if somebody has bad spending habits, it's hard to break those habits. So I imagine there are a lot of people out here watching this that have some bad spending habits. Well, there are a couple of things that I would suggest, and I've actually used this. When I first got to Vegas, I was bad with money, but then I started making a lot of money, and I thought to myself, okay, I really want to start saving this. The first thing I do is I use an envelope system. What I do is I liquidate everything. I don't keep any, I kept, I don't know, maybe 10% of my total, like, let's say I made $700 that week. I'll keep $50 in the bank. I'll take the other $650 out. I budget my money, I'll put it in envelopes, and then I'll put it in a safe. Here's another tip. It's a lot easier to spend money when you swipe it on the card than when you're actually paying in cash. That'll be $89.95, $120, $220s, $320s, $420s. God damn, that's $520s. Mentally, that is much more. It just like you said, you got to stay awake. It makes you much more awake to lay out the cash than it does to swipe the card, because you don't see the balance dropping. You just see the card swiping. But when you see your money pile start to drop, it keeps you aware of what's going on. And I agree. You don't need a running spreadsheet or anything like that. At least not initially. You just have to spend less than you make. I don't think that's hard at all.
Yep.
Okay, we got another. I swear to God, this guy is probably 18 years old. The same guy who wanted to know about your cars. He wants to know what your net worth is. My net worth is $6. That's the answer to your question. I think.
Don't worry about it. I'm doing just fine. Thanks for asking.
There you go. Exactly. Yeah, we're good here. Another question: how many business? Speaking of businesses, how many businesses have you owned? Or how many businesses have you owned, and which businesses had you tried and failed at? That's an interesting question.
Well, I've probably tried and failed at least half of the ones that I own right now. So
okay.
I think I've got about 4 businesses now, if I were to count them correctly.
Okay.
Most of them are fairly automated, outsourced, and organized in a way that I don't need to work on them like 9 to 5 or
Good.
Like when I first started out. Like when you first started out as an entrepreneur, you're going to be working all the time because you got to figure shit out.
Of course, yeah.
And you're not just the guy marketing, creating leads, servicing the customers, doing the accounting, the bookkeeping entries. You're also the janitor too.
Yes.
You got to empty the garbages and vacuum the floor so the office doesn't look like if you have an office. So you're the jack of all trades, but the problem with that is you've got to it's got to be scalable. You got to be able to scale it up, grow, and as you're growing, put in the right systems and things in place. And
it has to stay relative. It has to stay relative.
Yeah.
And here, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, there's no real blueprint for that. Like everybody wants me to give you like some kind of blueprint to go and be some successful entrepreneur. Like buy this course, do these 67 steps, and you will make $1 million.
And you too will make $1 million.
But no, it doesn't work that way. But it's okay. So back to your question, the number of businesses. Yeah. So most of them are automated, outsourced, and optimized in a fashion that I don't need to work on them very often. They're mostly service or information based. There's recurring revenue that I generate off them. And there's tremendous value that people get out of the services I'm offering, which is why they continue to be my customers and continue to buy from me. Those are all the important key things that you need to know.
Not only that, it goes back to what you said earlier. You don't want to work in product-based businesses. You want to work in the services and information industry because those, again, you're not worrying about inventory. If somebody buys something from you one time, they're not going to need it for a while, of course, provided that it's quality product. But if it's information, if it's service-based, that's when you get those residual customers. To me, that's a better business model. I've owned 1.5 businesses in my life. The very first business I owned was a mattress shop. I owned it for 2 years and I was very successful. I made a shitload of money. Here was the problem. I worked my ass off. And listen, man, you nailed it on the head. Dude, I was the salesman. I was the inventory guy. I unloaded the trucks. I was the janitor, the delivery man. I made a shitload of money, but I worked all the time. Now, the good part about
cost, right?
I'm telling you that this is how it worked. Now, the good thing about working all the time is I didn't have time to spend my money. So, at the end of my 2 years, I had a nice little nest egg, but I said, listen, man, I'm going to run myself ragged. I was like 28 years old. I was like, dude, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to die at 38 from all the stress. Here's another tip that I would recommend to people looking to stay out of debt and run businesses successfully. And this is lifestyle. So let me give you a scenario. Let's say you start a business and, they say the average business, it takes 2 years to turn a profit. That's the standard. That's the business that relies on outside funding sources. If you're bootstrapping this, if you're funding this yourself, you can turn a profit, the next month, right? Even though, you're in the red, you don't owe anybody any money. So let's say the very first time you turn a profit, you make $2,000, right? $2,000 a month for the first 6 months. Then, months 7 through 12, now you're making $3,500 a month. Again, these are just modest round numbers. Here's where people really start to screw up. When they made $2,000, they had a budget. They would spend X amount of money on this, X amount of money on that, my mortgage, my car payment, etc. Now, when they get in, oh, wow, I'm making $6,500 a month. Yeah, let's move into a bigger house. Let's buy a better car. Let's upgrade my clothes a little bit. Then they're making $10,000 a month and they upgrade their lifestyle even more. And this is where they go wrong. When you start to make more money, your lifestyle needs to stay the same. No, I'm not saying that I have to live in that little tiny 1-bedroom apartment that you lived in when you first started the business. But again, just like Richard said, you cannot spend relative to what you make. I remember Patrick Ewing, a former center for the New York Knicks, famously said, he says, listen, we make a shitload of money, but we spend a shitload of money too. That's why most professional athletes, specifically basketball players, are broke. What is it, like 5 years after they retire from the league? Because they spend all of that money. Do not let the money you make dictate your lifestyle. You dictate your lifestyle and let your money acquiesce to that. That's how you save. That's how you save, build wealth, and remain debt free. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, and just to kind of top up on that a little bit, is minimalism to me is something that I subscribe to. Absolutely. I mean, it's part of the reason why that chick I mentioned earlier called me cheap. There's a difference between being cheap and being frugal. And I'm definitely way more on the frugal side. I think that comes from my upbringing. I mean, my dad's English. My grandfather was allegedly cheap, sort of thing too. Sure. But by living in a minimalist, I could live in a house twice as big as what I'm in right now.
Of course, but why? Right, exactly.
I can't live in all the rooms. I don't need to pay a housekeeper to clean double the square footage. I don't want to pay double the property taxes. I mean, ideally, I'd love the same size house in a 4-car garage because I'm a car guy.
Attaboy. There we go. Now that's what we're talking about.
I spend the money like an idiot, but I would buy cars that only appreciate in value, which is what I do now. In the past, I've bought cars that will depreciate in value, so you have to be clever about that. So that's an important point too. Spend money when you spend it in a fashion that is going to go to things that make monetary sense, or that are going to give you a good ROI. Again, that R8 cost me 140 grand. It's worth about 20 grand more since I bought it.
There you go.
It's going up in value because it's the last naturally aspirated V10 with a gated 6-speed manual, and it was in a fucking movie. Those 3 things come together, and they make that car exclusive, which makes it more desirable over time because they don't make them anymore. So you got to be clever when you spend money to things that are going to return some sort of like rate of return to you somehow, somewhere later on down the road. Or at the very least, buy shit that's not going to lose you money, if you have to buy stuff.
And again, you make another good point, right? So I just got done talking about lifestyle. If you make more money, don't go crazy with the lifestyle. Now, if something is important to you, like, dude, you love cars. Oh my God, what would you spend 140 grand on cars for? Dude, that's what you love to do, right? The point is,
but I see it as an investment.
There you go. Well, even if it wasn't an investment, if that's your thing, do it. But you're not going to upgrade your house. You're not going to buy a $2 million house. You're not going to buy a $6,000 watch. No. If you're listen, we all have vices. We're all going to spend a little more coin than we probably should on something or another. This is just who we are as people. Fortunately for you, your passion happens to be things that appreciate in value. But for those of you that don't, listen, man, if you're into watches, if you're into I don't know, antique furniture, whatever it is that you're into, don't be afraid to spend a little extra money if that's what you want to do. Me personally, I value experience over possession. So I've spent a lot of money on traveling. I've spent a shitload of money on traveling, and those experiences cannot be taken away. No, those don't appreciate in value, but it's part of what made me who I am. But the fact that I've traveled all around the world, no, dude, this is a shirt of the guy that I worked for in Atlanta 8-10 years ago. I still have it. And again, it's not being cheap. It's just that when it comes to upgrading your lifestyle, you can't upgrade everything. Oh my God, I'm making more money. I need new shoes. I need no. If it's important to you, by all means, spend the money, but don't upgrade your life all around.
And tying that into entrepreneurship, you're going to have obstacles that will get in your way as you're running your business, right? So, I mean, living paycheck to paycheck, if you have a job, which by the way, job just stands for just over broke, guys.
Oh, I love that. I've never heard that before.
If you're living paycheck to paycheck, working at a job, it's no different than living, paycheck to paycheck as an entrepreneur.
Okay.
If you're at the max level and you're not diversifying and moving money into holding companies or investing into new businesses or creating passive income sources.
Okay.
I mean, I've been an entrepreneur 15 years now, let's say, because I really started when I was about 30.
Okay, so you had the itch early.
Sorry?
You had the itch early.
Oh no, dude! I was doing it when I was a teenager. I had a car washing business. I used to hire like other friends to help me with my newspaper route. I used to shovel driveways in the winter and cut grass while all the other kids were around, doing nothing. Parents were giving them $20 to go watch movies. I was working my ass off because my parents wouldn't give me. But yeah, so you don't want to rely on any one business or any one source of income. You definitely want to diversify. And it doesn't matter if you make $1 million a year, $100,000 a year, or $40,000 a year. You can still diversify in different things in fractional rates. The same percentage. 20% is 20%.
Sure.
So if you're getting 20% of your income off this whatever investment, it doesn't matter if it's on $40,000 or $400,000. It's still 20%. It's still going to grow, and you're not going to be relying on one source. Because it can be taken away from you.
That's
I
right.
saw the same thing in 2015. To give you guys a little bit of insight, in 2012, the Canadian government introduced new legislation vis-a-vis through credit card companies. Because what we do is we save people a shitload of money, and they didn't like that. So they legislated and encouraged the government to change policies that were more friendly to their profit margins and less friendly to consumers. That's the government. They really give a about you.
Of course, right.
So that completely changed the landscape of the industry that I was in. And most businesses either shut down or left Canada completely. I found a way to pivot it, but most of them just disappeared. And they lost their livelihood and they had to pivot into something else or go work for somebody else. Like I was running a trade organization that was lobbying the government on the other side. And there was guys involved with me that had to go get a job for somebody else after they were a successful entrepreneur because the legislative changes came over. So you can't rely on one source being there forever, just like you can't rely on a woman being with you forever.
There you go.
Everything in your life has the opportunity to go feral at any given time. Women always reserve the right to change their minds. Anything can change within the scope of the way you run the business.
The market could change. The consumers, the legislation. I mean, the variables are endless.
Yep.
Here's a good. I've got just a few more questions here. Here's a very good question. He wants to know: do you run a script or are you on instinct? In other words, when you run your businesses, do you follow a plan or obviously you have to follow a plan, right?
Yeah.
I mean, nothing is just freestyle. But is it more of a plan or is it just instinct at times?
It's both. When you first start out yourself as an entrepreneur, it's more planned.
Okay.
As time passes, like probably about 6-7 years, the way through, you start to rely more on your instinct.
Okay.
And that's right more often than your planning. So, your instinct will always trump your planning at the end of the day, somewhere, somehow.
And that's just your experience at that point, right? The reason why you follow plan in the beginning is because you don't have much experience. But as soon
you know what you're doing. It's the reason why the first time you open the box from IKEA and you have to assemble the furniture, you're like, all right, I got to look at it. But if you've assembled it before or something similar before, you kind of, wing it, right?
Right. Totally agree. This is sort of a throwaway question here. What business would you love to start? If someone said, Richard, you can have whatever business you want. I will fund it completely. You don't owe me anything. It just drops out of the sky. What business would you like to start? What business would you like to get into if money were not a factor?
Well, that would never happen, but I'd probably do like a supercar company or something like that.
Yeah.
Like build, some kind of off like supercar.
You probably, dude, honestly, that's the kind of job that's the kind of job you probably pull 16-hour days and just lose track of time. Yeah. Totally agree.
You never make a dime. I mean, most of those companies fail, but
but it's cool though, right? To be able
Yeah.
to build something like that. Yeah, no, I totally agree. Last question here. Why are you successful? What is the one factor that you attribute the most to your success?
Being relentless. And I'm
Okay.
not talking about just being relentless. I'm talking about being relentless. There's a really good book. I think his name's Tim Cook. I don't know if you ever read it. Called Relentless by Tim S. Grover.
Okay.
And he talks mostly about his experience in the basketball leagues because he was a coach. And he talked about all of these top shelf athletes that had to deal with all kinds of things that might have presented like serious obstacles, or maybe, you know, like the whole give up sort of notion.
Sure.
And they just put your head down and push through. And I think that's probably the single greatest thing missing from men today in this world, because we get feminism hammered up our ass since we're 4 or 5 years old, and we start going to school and we're told to be soft and kind and not be so aggressive and that kind of
masculine.
And it's weaned out of men today. And I think that if men can subscribe to the notion that being utterly relentless in a smart way, I mean, there's times where you have to give up. There's just times where you have to look at it and be like, this is not worth it.
Right. And move on.
Right. But just being utterly relentless in finding a way to make it happen is just awesome. Like, I love it when people say to me, oh, that'll never work, or you can't do that. It's like, me.
Right. I think a lot, and I think a lot of men in particular, they thrive off of that. And listen, I mean, we mentioned professional athletes, like I don't know, like Tom Brady, like he's the epitome of that. 6th round draft pick, 199 pick overall. He was literally told 198 times that he couldn't do it. People wonder why. God, Tom Brady's a maniac. Of course he is. This is successful people are maniacs. You can't be wildly successful and be balanced up top. But the one thing that all of these men have in common is just being relentless.
Yep.
Richard, I appreciate you making the time for us today, guys. Guys, definitely listen, you guys can follow him on, obviously you can add him on Facebook. Just look for Richard Cooper, Entrepreneurs in Cars. He can be found on Twitter. Follow him on Twitter at Rich_Cooper. And then, of course, you can find his channel on YouTube, Entrepreneurs in Cars. Richard, I appreciate you stopping by, man. And listen, anytime you want me on the show, dude, you got it.
All right, brother. Thanks.
All right, man. Take care.